And I'm going to talk about healing healthcare, definition of healing in a healthcare context, describe the place of healing in healthcare, and have a sense of the role, not just of healthcare practitioners, but I think of all of us in relationship to other people, the difference we make in their process of healing. So before we talk about healing, just briefly a word about suffering. Medicine doesn't really seem to understand healing. It doesn't really seem to understand suffering. And it doesn't pay enough attention to suffering. So he said, we've got to look at what is suffering, and then how would that change medicine if we started to pay attention to that. And here's a definition of suffering that Eric used. Suffering is experienced by persons, not merely by bodies, and has its source in challenges that threaten the intactness of the person as a complex social and psychological entity. I love that definition because, you see, we tend to think of suffering as pain, and pain can definitely cause suffering. But you could be suffering because your bills aren't paid, or because you're homeless, or because of 1,000 things that threaten your sense of yourself as a person. And so it's that sense of yourself as a person that's so important to pay attention to in all of our interactions. And that, I think, is the basis of how we can at least facilitate healing in other people. But the other part is, can you relate to this person as a person, primarily in a way that validates them as a person? Because it's that validation of themselves as a person that's threatened by the illness, that's causing the suffering, and that you can make a difference to in how you relate to them. And that's the process we call healing. And they would define healing as a relational process involving movement towards an experience of integrity and wholeness, which may be facilitated by a caregiver's intervention, but is dependent on an innate potential within the patient. So we don't make healing, we don't create healing. That occurs within people, but we can sure make a difference to that process. But there's also a process over time. And when you take time into account, healing becomes a journey. People need support, and not support in terms of facts, figures, ideas, but you matter because you're you. And that idea that you matter, that's what gets you through, and that's what kind of fuels that process of healing. So healing is a roller coaster. It's not a simple process of all positive. It's up and down. Because really we have to adjust to a new sense of ourselves. So if suffering is a threat to our sense of ourselves, healing is really growing into a new sense of ourselves.